Finding a job is rarely easy, but add in all the complications of the pandemic, virtual interviews, and all the rest, and it can be really, really difficult. So today, we asked for some help from Lynn Juve, who is a job search strategist and the founder of Bespoke Professional. Thank you very much for taking time with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
It is a tough thing. We have massive unemployment. People are out of work. Looking for a job is emotionally draining, and it's just challenging from a physical point of view. What do we do to think differently about what it takes to find a job?
Absolutely. So it's interesting for me because I've been working with candidates prior to this for about 2 years, and a lot of people who are going through significant job changes. So with that comes a lot of anxiety anyway. So you can think of people who have taken a hiatus, taken time off. 42% of women take time off to raise children, do a myriad of other things. People who are pivoting, going into other industries, and people who are trying to get out of really tough environments. And so that already comes with a lot of anxiety. Really, what I work with candidates on is to tell their story and to really navigate the system, realizing that it's very difficult and the hiring process was already going through a lot of growing pains, and to understand that some of the walls that they're hitting aren't because they're not qualified. It's just a matter of understanding how to navigate these new systems.
As you talk to potential employers, do you share that honestly? I mean, it's part of your story that you're trying to navigate, as you say, and overcome the struggles, and this is part of your coping abilities, excuse me, and the skills that you bring to a potential job?
I think, when someone is seeking a job, they want to think about what they bring to the table. So I think it is, well, authenticity is really important in saying, this is who I am, these are the skills I have, and knowing how you fit with that job. I think it's wise to be careful about sort of the struggles because a lot of people in the hiring process, those systems work for them. They're able to find the candidates, but it doesn't mean that it always works for the candidate side. And so I think the important thing is doing the background work to say, how can I really market myself well and put my strengths forward? And from there, that's what really helps to navigate the system.
All right, that makes sense. You also suggest that people understand the landscape. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, so there's research that shows that women, for example, won't apply to jobs unless they meet almost 100% of the requirements. That's kind of being touted as women aren't as confident, but from the people I talk to, and it's not only women who struggle with this, it's just confusing because job descriptions are mostly written like they were in the 1970s. At that point, people would meet a lot more of the requirements. What's happening now is, on one hand, we have this idea jobs are changing. We have roles listed, community managers, people doing search engine optimization, things that people probably don't have 5 or 10 years experience in. But a lot of candidates aren't aware that they can apply to these jobs if they don't meet 100% of the requirements. So I think that's part of the background is understanding what am I eligible for? Where do I find these jobs? And going for these jobs knowing that it's okay to kind of put a flyer in and say, I think I can do this and here's why.
I think that's such an important point because I would do that. I would look at it, and if I didn't meet all the qualifications, I would think I'm wasting my time to apply for this job. But you're saying go ahead and go for it.
Yeah, I think this is one of the hardest things. And this is one of the reasons I work with clients more in depth is to help them understand what they are qualified for. It's not as a straightforward process as you think. I have my quick test is if you should meet at least 50% of the requirements. And usually you can see what are the things they're saying, yes, you have to have this, and what are the things you do on a day-to-day basis. If you
All right,
haven't
good.
done all, yeah, if you haven't done all the things
I'm
you've done
sorry,
on
go
a
ahead.
day-to-day basis, that's okay.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it so that you can kind of measure yourself against those qualification requirements a little more realistically. You also suggest that people understand more about networking and LinkedIn, which is apparently super important in developing a professional profile and making those connections.
Yes. So for LinkedIn, there's just a couple things people can do that they might not be doing. The biggest one I see is if I get someone's resume, it's often 2 pages. It has lots of interesting bullets on it. When I go to their LinkedIn profile, all I'm seeing is this is the title I've had. LinkedIn is like a search engine. So when recruiters and hiring professionals are looking for you, they're using keyword searches. And simply by taking those bullets that are in your resume and copying them into your professional section of your LinkedIn profile, that makes you show up on keyword searches much better. So that's a very quick thing that you can do. And I think that's important to show up that way, but also networking is probably the most overlooked part of job searching. And it's kind of scary for people. So if they can, they'll try to avoid it, but it is very important to leverage your network in finding a job.
Yeah, that's a good psychological thing to understand about yourself so that you can overcome it. Let's talk about the virtual interview. I'll tell you the absolute truth, just even interviewing people this way as opposed to in person where I can feel their vibe and we can talk to each other in the normal human way has been difficult for me. So if you add the stress of interviewing for a job over the internet, that's tough. What are your tips?
Yeah, for me, there's really two parts. One is what you said. There's so much anxiety that goes into a job interview and it adds to the anxiety. How can someone take that down? So we make our anxiety worse when we say, I have to be perfect. If there's any technical difficulties, then they're going to discount me. And I've talked to candidates who feel this way, and it's normally not the case. So kind of taking that anxiety down and knowing that right now with some of the Wi-Fi issues, everyone's having technical difficulties. So being easier on yourself. As far as actually taking the anxiety down, I think it's about practicing. Zoom has a free account that you can set up. You can set up free meetings through Google Meet. And then you can actually do this with a friend, someone who's in your household. And going through the process one time is really going to settle your anxiety. All of that being said, it's about telling your story. And so I think what people should really make sure that they're not neglecting in this is, am I prepared to just be on time, be polite, and most of all, be enthusiastic about why you want the job? A lot of stuff can be forgiven if you show up and make it clear that you really want this job and you're willing to work for it.
I think that's such an important point because we get so caught up in the technical aspects that we forget about the more important part, which is the connection we're trying to make.
Absolutely. If we get nervous and we're seeing technical things go wrong, it's easy to get in our heads and then forget what it is that we wanted to say and express that enthusiasm.
Thank you so much. This will help so much for people who are looking for a job and just to kind of, reboot our thinking around it. Courtney, thank you so Lynn, I'm sorry. Thank you so very, very much for your help today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was my pleasure.
When we come back, can you guess which local town is up for Best Main Street in America? We will tell you which local town and city it is after this.